Destined! For Destined!
Here at Staunch on Film, we ask the hard-hitting questions. Like, what are the lost Quentin Tarantino film universe connections? What's the most obscure Corey Feldman movie? And perhaps the most daunting question to date. Who is the best Leatherface? I've been pondering making this video for a while now. I just know I'll probably get some grief for it, so I guess I put it off for that reason. But the time has come, Staunch Gang. Not only is it STAUNCH-O-WEEN, but, also because Netflix recently released their Ed Gein show that was essentially just unwatchable. Oh my god. Seriously, say what you want about the Dahmer or Menendez series, but at least those didn't have their antagonists swinging around chainsaws or having serial unaliver dance sequences or whatever the hell that was. I don't know. I get that Leatherface was inspired by the guy, but they went way too far. However, one thing about the series I did find interesting was how it delved into the making and the birth of the original Chainsaw Massacre film, where we got a younger version of Tobe Hooper in the show explaining his take on, a new and very real human monster. I mean, what can I say? That original Chainsaw Massacre film is a classic, and as a South Texan myself, I cannot overstate my love for the film. It's like in my blood, you know what I mean? And this whole video can basically end here because Gunnar Hansen is flawless as our hero Leatherface in that original film, giving him, for arguably the only time in the series, a real-life personality and an avenue to sympathize with this absolute madman, if you will. But if I'm being true to myself, I gotta say that Gunnar Hansen in the original film didn't give me my favorite take on the character, even still. I know, right? Blasphemy. But hear me out. I do think that the character was sort of revamped and retooled a little here, but I absolutely love Leatherface in Chainsaw Part 3, aptly titled Leatherface. Here he is, played by R.A. Mihailoff, and no, I don't say he's one of my favorite actors to take on the role just because he was in License to Drive. Give me a break here.
Look, mister, you can't do this to my car.
Boy, I've driven with deer, antelope, even bears strapped to that bumper. Ain't no 65-pound sack of fly shit like you gonna shake me a hella different.
And no, it is not only because of that kick-ass Leatherface trailer we got. Legendary.
Leatherface.
Why do I think that his is among the best? I mean, look at this guy. His skin mask seems to be clinging on by a rotting thread. He is huge and hulking, and this time around just much more mean-spirited and kind of just over it, you know what I mean? It's even his birthday in this film, and with the addition to his spiffy new chainsaw, there's just so much to love here with this Leatherface. He even doesn't let the other family, overrun him or put him down. He stands up for himself here. And the idea of taking on new identities with different masks and whatnot is also kept out of the film largely, which is an element I also saw kind of gone from Chainsaw Part 2. That was like more of a parody of Leatherface. But perhaps the biggest detriment to this version of Leatherface, well, Chainsaw Part 3 just wasn't that good, Now back to Chainsaw 2, I do love that movie, but I don't really consider it to be a shining light for Leatherface. He is a little more than just a child here and kind of plays second fiddle to the other cast, which is fine. I mean, I totally get what they went for with the sequel, and I do feel it's an underrated entry either way, but still, not my favorite Leatherface in that one. So from here on out, I mean, it gets messy. Honestly, I have next to nothing positive to say about any other takes of the character, not really. I mean, I'll get to that, but stuff like Chainsaw 3D...
Do your thing, cuz.
And the Netflix Leatherface, I enjoyed the Netflix version for what it was, but there's not much to say about the Leatherface in that movie, much less make a case as to why either two of these movies should even be acknowledged in the first place. With anything aside from, maybe the worst claims of the series, I'll give it that. But woof. And even aside from Chainsaw 3D and the Netflix Chainsaw, I mean, do the others even matter? I mean, does anybody remember or give a shit about Leatherface in this absolute piece of trash? It's like they're actively trying to ruin the character there. There was some staying power, I feel, with the remake Leatherface. While it kind of forced us to look behind the curtain, this Leatherface reminded me a lot of Leather from Part 3. But with the right amount of Gunnar Hansen involved as well, you know what I mean? I even didn't mind the prequel take on him, not really, but I guess that's really, it when it comes to Leatherface and me praising the character in these movies. And I know I kind of have to reach, but I mean, I do love this franchise. But there's even some takes on the character we never got to fully see, like when Buckethead took on Leatherface in All-American Massacre, which I'm assuming is just never going to get released, and I'm guessing that was supposed to be an extension of Leatherface from Chainsaw Part 2, but even though, you know, that footage popped up on eBay and all that stuff recently, I still think we're never going to see it. But to go back to the Ed Gein show, it was pretty cool to see a little bit of the making of Chainsaw dramatized here. They nailed the look and the feel overall, honestly. And I would have much rather watched the show about the making of Leatherface than this whatever the hell this Ed Gein thing was. But it wasn't just Tobe Hooper that was fictionalized here. That's the interesting part, as we also get a Netflix version of Kim Hinkle, who is just as responsible for Chainsaw Massacre as Hooper was. Now, who did a better job with the character after the original film? Well, I suppose that can be debated, as Kim Hinkle did take on the franchise on his own with the fourth entry, the often hated Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Next Generation, which was originally titled, of course, The Return of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, basically being Hinkle's take on a sequel to the original masterpiece. And I gotta say, folks, in The Next Generation, I finally got my favorite take on Leatherface.
This is Lucy. Lucy. Ay, 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 ay.
Ricky, I want to be in the show.
You heard that right, guys. I know. Take it out on me in the comments. But please, let me make my case here. I assure you, you are misled or even unaware of the greatness behind this version of Leatherface. In my opinion, largely due to the actor behind the mask.
Our guest tonight can be seen in the return of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre as not one, but three Leatherfaces. Robert Jacks. Hi, Robbie.
Hi, Sandra.
Hi, baby. So you play three Leatherfaces?
Three.
Leatherface was portrayed by Austin, Texas actor and musician Robert "Robbie" Jacks, a staple in indie film and music at the time, in Austin, Texas at least, and someone who was just, well regarded in so many circles of the underground variety, but, even with so little, Robert Jacks left so much behind. Chainsaw 4 has always been a favorite of mine. The low-budget schlock of it all makes for a very creepy and unnervingly, realistic Texas atmosphere, I'll say that. Everything is just so dirty, so hot, so sticky, and just weird. Welcome to Texas. Yeah, some major swings are taken here with the cult stuff, and, the pacing, and Leatherface himself is... Here, I don't know, Leatherface is just more of a sympathetic character who kind of feels forced into this weird, bizarre scenario along with the rest of us. Is forced to sit next to his family and play nice, and is just kind of trying his best to survive here himself, He's just trying to fit in. And with the return of the multiple Leatherface take on the character with the different masks and different personalities, I mean, it really does nail that aspect and gives this Leatherface a really well-rounded kind of feel. In my opinion, the basic hunter-butcher Leatherface at the film's start is absolutely terrifying. The way Hinkle chose to emulate the childlike demeanor goes full force here. And you can even see some traits from Gunnar Hansen, all throughout this take of Leatherface, with some shocking side effects. This scene right here, man, I think it's up there when talking legendary Chainsaw Massacre scenes. Something about this whole thing just freaks me the hell out.
Heather! It's okay, she's my girlfriend.
And you gotta remember, this is directed by Kim Hinkle. The guy was there for the original film and owns part of the rights. And with this being his kind of take on it all, and of course his first directorial effort, I gotta say, the dude made a cool movie. And his overall take on Leatherface is awesome in my opinion. Not that it all came easy. I mean, the film had a notoriously difficult shoot. And I know it is, lampooned by a lot of fans today, but it just works. And I do feel like the movie's kind of coming full circle and getting more appreciated as the years go on. Robert Jacks at that point had appeared in a number of films, in varying aspects. His debut was actually in a Golden Globus film, who of course would be responsible for Chainsaw 2, and Jacks would also have an uncredited voice cameo in the legendary Austin, Texas film Slacker. But where Jacks made his real mark was on Austin, Texas itself. It's hard to understate how loved he was in his community, and equal parts, hard to prove it, as there's virtually no footage or images at all, as I did find some remnants of his time in theater, where he would be well respected and be part of some big shows, as well as writing, producing, and starring in his own stage play Boy Trouble, which was kind of chronicling his years with the band Boy Trouble, who I had kind of found out was his band, and they all dressed like women in the group. and which is something that comes full circle with Chainsaw as well. But he wrote a play about it, and he starred and acted in it and everything. It did really well, sold out a few times. I just really wish I could find it, if anyone has footage of it, you know. His theater work seemed to be, I don't know, his solace for the time. He kind of got to do everything there, you know. He would even compose music for whatever plays he could. But all the while, Jax would still take up offers for film around the area, which led to an audition for a role of a lifetime, a role any Texan would die for.
Oh, I got it there. If you start to feel your mask come loose or anything, let me know, okay?
Well, it was happening during the scene. You know, what was I going to do? Hey, my mask's loose.
So it was stuck up until that point?
Yeah.
Okay.
The casting of Robbie Jax came after quite a search, sort of, you know, as Bill Johnson, one of the 3 actors to play Leatherface in Chainsaw 2, well, he was actually offered the role here in Massacre 4, but he declined. So that could have been interesting, as it would have been cool just to see someone who's done it before come back. As would have if they would have cast Gunnar Hansen, who they tried to get him to reprise his role. They offered it to him, but he was charging a bit too much. So it was around this time the production was like, yeah, we don't really have any money to cast any notable actor, you know, or any lesser known actor for that fact. Low budget here. So they decided to go to the local theater route, which is where they cast most of the young actors, and found their Leatherface in Robbie Jax. And of course, Jax would even contribute to the film's soundtrack, co-writing the film's love theme with none other than Debbie Harry, who, as it was an idol of Jax, you know, and I couldn't find how they came to meet, but I did find that they were indeed good friends. A friend of Robbie stated that it was his dream to one day be in a horror movie and to one day meet Debbie Harry. And that dream came true for Jax in spades. I mean, that's so cool that he found that friendship with Debbie Harry. As it goes, Chainsaw Massacre 4 was of course shelved for budgetary reasons, and then released later to capitalize on the start of McConaughey and Zellweger whenever A Time to Kill and Jerry Maguire were released, you know, when they suddenly blew up in Hollywood. So the film was finally released in 1994 under the changed title, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Next Generation, to a more or less disgruntled audience. I've always loved this movie, but, you know, this was the franchise installment that came out when I was renting movies and soaking it all up, so I pretty much would have liked anything that came out around that time. I mean, this was the 90s, and something about that movie just worked for me. Probably the 90s attitude of it all when I'm thinking about it. When the film finally was released, Jax was a radio personality in Austin, Texas, having a few shows, but most notable was the Robbie and Shelby show, where they had apparently had an epic interview with Debbie Harry. Now, I couldn't find it, obviously, but he was also doing another show with none other than Gibby Haynes of the Butthole Surfers, who were obviously Texas boys themselves. You know, they were appearing in a bunch of weird movies at the time with Tom Stern and Alex Winter with their stuff like Barbecue the Movie, The Idiot Box, you know, that show. And their collaborator, the legendary John Hawkes, another Texas boy, well, he would work with Robbie in another Austin, Texas oddity, Scary Movie. The real Scary Movie. You know, even though I do love both of them. But so it's very cool to see all these little circles kind of come together. But what I was getting at is that Robbie did have a radio show with Gibby Haynes. And that's just another place where, you know, Robert Jax just fit right in. Honestly, the duo of Jax and Gibby, just epic.
Who are you?
Why?
Because I heard someone say, if you're not wearing pants, to call.
That's us. A naked caller.
A player with her.
Maybe he'll call back.
Let's star 69 him, why don't we?
It won't work.
It won't? Yeah, it will.
No, you can't star 69 from a multi-line phone.
But it wasn't just the radio where Robbie was hanging out, as Robbie's house was kind of a place for the meeting of the minds, if you will, along with all the rescue cats he would take care of. You know, we saw people, the likes of like Debbie Harry, Rocky Erickson, they would all frequent Robbie's house with all these bands and actors and musicians, and, you know, there would be kind of a makeshift salon ran out of his house too, so you can only imagine the crowd that he got there, and you can only imagine being a fly in the wall for some of those conversations. Again, I would love to see some footage of this, if it exists.
Now, did you go to see these movies when you were a kid? Were you obsessed with these kind of films?
Actually, I saw a lot of them on late night television because it's the only time they would let them on. So I watched them always, you know, because in the TV guide that always lists horror.
Horror, I know,
you know,
exactly.
And that's the main one you rivet on, so you'd stay up and watch those, you know, consecutively.
That was a great comfort, those movies.
Yeah, it was.
Wasn't it? Like
it
when
was.
when your
loved
parents
it.
went out, or you were left alone, or with a babysitter or
Or you're
something.
just up alone with the TV on. You're
I
not
know.
supposed to be out, and you're watching it, and you are. It's endorphins, you know. Things just creep you out.
Sadly, you would be out of nowhere in 2001 when Robbie started to feel a little off. I won't go into detail here, but some friends took him to the hospital, and after about a day or so, they were looking good. Nothing seemed too serious, at least. But then out of nowhere, Robbie was gone. Overall, Robbie Jacks was an endlessly creative type that you might have run into once every millennium. He was relentless in his craft, yet took the time to soak up life. He never met a person that wasn't his friend, in some fashion, and was never held back artistically, giving it his all for any project, and giving his all to both human and animal offstage. I feel his take on Leatherface is simply the most engaging, yet mysterious of the bunch. Truly sympathetic, yet horrifying. Somehow walking that tightrope while, always walking in the shoes of some legends before him. You know what I mean? It all just works. It's a great meshing. And with the transformation of Leatherface happening fully here by the end of the film, we can really get some kind of arc for the character for probably the first time. And yeah, even though Leather is basically a supporting character in this film, Jax demands the screen when he's on it. If anyone understood the movie they were making, I feel it was Robbie Jacks. As grueling as that shoot must have been. If anyone has any more info or anything on the sort about Robbie, I'd love to hear from you. Please hit me up on Instagram or email me here. I was always fascinated by that whole era of Austin, Texas, and I'd love to get the full picture on old Robbie Jacks. Rest in peace, buddy. Stick around, Staunch Gang. It is STAUNCH-O-WEEN. We have plenty coming.